Thought Vibration or the Law of Attraction in the Thought World by William Walker Atkinson is a groundbreaking exploration of the power of the mind and its ability to shape our reality. Written in the early 20th century, this influential work delves into the concept that our thoughts are not merely fleeting mental processes, but powerful forces that attract corresponding experiences into our lives. Atkinson, a pioneer in the New Thought movement, articulates how by mastering our thoughts and emotions, we can consciously direct the course of our lives, drawing abundance, success, and happiness. The book emphasizes the idea that positive thoughts attract positive outcomes, while negative thoughts bring forth challenges and obstacles. Atkinson provides practical guidance on how to harness the law of attraction through mental discipline, focus, and the cultivation of a positive mindset. He challenges readers to take control of their mental world, to use thought as a tool for personal transformation, and to unlock the unlimited potential that lies within. For viewers of 365 Motivationals, this book serves as a powerful reminder of the incredible influence our thoughts have on our reality. It's an inspiring and empowering read for anyone looking to create a life of purpose, positivity, and success by tapping into the limitless power of the mind. Foreword, in which the author has a word to say about teachers and disciples, himself included. I am in receipt of a letter from an earnest student of New Thought, who writes me that he is endeavoring to put into practice the teachings for which I stand. That is all right, I think he will get some good out of the practice, I know that I do. But here is where the trouble comes in. He goes on to say that he is a faithful disciple of mine, and is content to sit at the feet of the teacher. Now, if you will pardon the slang, I must say that such talk makes me tired. I wish no disciples are mere parrots repeating what one says, mere human sheep trotting along after some conceited old bellwether. I do not wish to pose as a bellwether, nor do I wish a flock of human sheep trotting after me. I want every one of my fellow students of mental science to be his own bellwether. I like comradeship and mutual help, the help of interdependence. But I don't like this talk of master and disciple, of leader and follower, this talk and idea of dependence. As for sitting at anyone's feet, the idea arouses all the spirit of independence within me. I don't want to sit at anyone's feet, and I don't want anyone to sit at mine. I am willing, and often glad, to listen to some teacher and to pick from his teachings such bits of truth as my mind is ready to receive. I am willing to say I don't know, and to accept from others that which appeals to me as truth, not because the other says that it is truth, but because my mind recognizes it as such. I take my own wherever I find it, because I recognize it as mine. I know that all students and teachers get their knowledge from the only source of supply. They can't get it from anywhere else. And if some other fellow happens to see a particular bit of truth before I do, I gladly accept a portion of it from his hands, be he king or beggar, while if I happen to see the thing first, I will gladly share it with all who are ready for it, and who may want it, without feeling that I am a leader, or teacher, or that they are followers or disciples. We are all fellow students, that's all. I recognize no man as my master, and I spurn the person who would call me master, if there be any so foolish. This feet-sitting talk makes me very, very weary. I am fully aware that certain teachers convey the idea that they are chosen mouthpieces of the infinite, and that all true teachings must bear their hallmark. And I also know the fanatical devotion and bigotry that many of the followers of such teachers manifest. But this is all child's play. The teachers sooner or later will be brought up against good hard stone walls, and their heads will be bruised until they realize just where they are at. And the disciples will have some individuality knocked into them later on, and will be made to stand upon their own feet, by reason of the props being knocked from under them. The New Thought aims at making individuals, not at converting people into droves of sheep, following the tinkle of the bell of some conceited old bellwether, who imagines that he is the whole thing. The growing soul must realize that it has within itself all that it requires. It may gladly accept from others suggestions, advice, bits of knowledge, and the like, as it goes along, the soul itself being the only judge of what it requires at each particular stage. But, in the end, it must do its own work, and must stand on its own feet. All the teachings in the world will not help you, unless you take hold of the matter yourself and work out your own salvation. You cannot get true mental or spiritual teaching by simply paying so much for a course of lessons and doing nothing yourself. You must bring something to the teacher before you can take anything away. You must work up to an understanding before the teachings of another will do you any good. The teacher may make a suggestion that will open up a line of thought for you, or he may point out a way that has proved of value to him, and thus save you much time and trouble. But you must do the real work yourself. A teacher may be so filled with the truth that he will overflow, and you will get some of the overflow. I believe that truth is catching. But even so, unless you make that truth your own by living it out and applying it to your needs, it will do you no good. And so long as you are content to sit at his feet and do the disciple act, you will not grow 1 inch. You will be merely a reflection of the teacher, instead of being an individual. We need a jogging up on this point every once in a while, lest we forget. It is so easy to have your thoughts pre-digested for you by some teacher or writer, so easy to receive your teaching in capsules. It is so nice to be able to sit down and swallow the tabloid that the teacher or writer kindly has prepared for you, and imagine that you are getting the real thing. But I tell you, friends, it won't do the work. Imbibe all the teachings you please, but you have got to get down to business yourself. You can't give someone else a power of attorney to do the work in your place. Life accepts no substitutes, you must step out yourself. It is mighty easy. This idea of paying so much, in time or money, to some teacher or writer, and then sneaking into the kingdom of heaven holding on to his skirts. But it won't work. You've got to do some hustling on your own account. And don't you make any mistake about this fact. Many of you are running around after teachers, preachers, prophets, seers, illuminated souls, and whatnot, expecting that your little fee for courses of lessons, private teachings, and all the rest is going to land you right up in the front rank. Don't you believe a word of it. You've got to go through the motions yourself before you will attain anything. You can't sneak in that way, it won't work. I look around me and see many of these poor creatures sitting at the feet of someone or other, sinking their individuality in that of the teacher, and not daring to think in original thought lest it conflict with some notion of their master. These good souls are so full of the teaching they are imbibing, they will repeat it by the yard, phrase after phrase, like a well-trained parrot. But they don't understand a bit of it. They are like the moon which shines by reason of the reflection of the sun's rays, and has no light or heat of its own. The talk of these disciples and sitters at the feet is nothing but moonshine, mere reflected light. Moons are dead, cold things, no light, no heat, no fire, no energy. Dead, 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 cold, barren, and played out. Stop this moon business and build yourself up into a Sunday. You have it in you, manifest it. Start yourself in motion and manifest life. Don't suppose that you must be able to solve all the riddles of the universe before you can do anything. Never mind about those riddles. Just you get down to the task that lies ahead of you, and throw into it some of that great life principle that is within you waiting for a chance to manifest itself. Don't make the mistake of supposing that this or that teacher has solved the great riddle. If he says he has, he is only bluffing and whistling to keep up courage. He may have found a good-sized chunk of the truth, and if he is willing to pass you a bit of it, all right, but he hasn't the whole thing, by a mighty sight. The whole thing isn't placing itself in the exclusive control of any little bit of itself. No one has a monopoly of knowing a corner on the truth. It is yours as much as anybody's, but you must dig for it. Don't bother about the theories or the unsolvable riddles, just get down to business and begin to live. Sometimes I amuse myself by reading some of the theories and explanations of those who think that they have hold of the whole thing. After I get through with the theories of one dead sure chap, I take up the directly opposite theories of another fellow who considers himself the special mouthpiece of the absolute. Phew! It's a great brain shaker. If you're not careful, you will find yourself being served a nice dish of scrambled brains. When I get sort of stewed up over such things, I go out into the sun and fall back on the laughing philosophy, which soon brings me around all right. Nothing will puncture these bubbles so quickly as a good dose of laughter. Laughter is the only thing that keeps the race from madness. The sense of humor is God's best gift to man. Try it the next time you get stewed up with high statements, basic truths, axiomatic principles. Beware of any teachings that will not stand the test of the sunny out-of-doors and the application of the laughing philosophy. Shun the teachings that require a pursed-up mouth and a strained, preternaturally sober face. Have nothing to do with teachings that require a dim, dark, sunless room to be absorbed in. Beware of teachings and doctrines that bear the musty smell of the cell upon them. Carry out into the sun the teachings that are offered you, and see whether or not they fade. Apply the chemical of laughter and ascertain whether the stuff bleaches. Remember this test when you are perplexed or worried over some strange theory or doctrine, no matter from whence it comes. If anyone tells you that which will not bear the test, discard the teaching, for it is spurious in that event. Try this on my writings along with the others. Stop being moons. Stop living by reflected light. Get into action and convert yourself into a living sun. You can do it. It is within your power. Every human soul contains within it the elements of the sun. Get to work and express yourself. Stiffen up your backbone and hold your head erect. Don't be afraid to say I am it. This is a straight from the shoulder talk. Don't tell me that you are disciples of mine. I disown you. I refuse to have disciples. Don't try to sit at my feet. If you do, I will use my feet to push you off the platform. I need room to swing my feet about and don't want people sitting there. But if you wish to call me brother, or fellow student, or schoolmate in the kindergarten of God, I will be glad to have you do so. That's all. We are, after all, little babes tugging away at the breast of the Absolute. William Walker Atkinson. My working creed. The I believe of the author. I believe that the mind of man contains the greatest of all forces, that thought is one of the greatest manifestations of energy. I believe that the man who understands the use of thought force can make of himself practically what he will. I believe that not only is one's body subject to the control of the mind, but that, also, one may change environment, luck, circumstances, by positive thought taking the place of negative. I know that the I can and I will attitude will carry one forward to success that will seem miraculous to the man on the I can't plane. I believe that thoughts are things, and that the law of attraction in the thought world will draw to one just what he desires or fears. I believe in the gospel of work, in hustling. I believe in the I do, as well as the I am. I know that the man who will take advantage of the power of the mind, and who will manifest that power in action, will go forward to success as surely and as steadily as the arrow from the bow of the skilled archer. I believe in the brotherhood of man. I believe in being kind. I believe in everyone minding his own business and allowing everyone else the same privilege. I believe that we have no right to condemn. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. I believe that he who hates is an assassin, that he who covets is a thief, that he who lusts is an adulterer, that the gist of a crime is in its desire. Seeing this, looking into our own hearts, how can we condemn? I believe that evil is but ignorance. I believe that to know all is to forgive all. I believe that there is good in every man, let us help him to manifest it. I believe in the absolute equality of the man and the woman. Sometimes I think that the odds are slightly in favor of the woman. I believe in the sacredness of sex, but I also believe that sex manifests on the spiritual and mental planes as well as on the physical. And I believe that to the pure all things are pure. I believe that man is immortal, that the real self is spirit, which uses mind and body as its tools, and manifests itself according to the fitness of the tools. I believe that man is rapidly growing into a new plane of consciousness, in which he will know himself as he is, will recognize the I am, the something within. I believe that there is an infinite power in, and of, all things. I believe that, although today we have but the faintest idea of that power, still we will steadily grow to comprehend it more fully, will get in closer touch with it. Even now we have momentary glimpses of its existence, a momentary consciousness of oneness with the Absolute. I believe that the greatest happiness consists in maintaining toward the Absolute the attitude of the trusting child, who, feeling no doubt of the parent's love, no doubt of his wisdom, places his little hand in that of the parent, and says, "Lead thou me on." I believe that he who feels towards the Absolute, the trustfulness of the babe which places its little tired head close to the breast of the mother, will also be conscious of the tender answering pressure, as the babe is drawn just a little closer to the mother heart. William Walker Atkinson. Chapter 1. The Law of Attraction in the Thought World. One great law, thought, a manifestation of energy, thought vibration. Vibrations of light and heat differ solely in rate of vibration, human brain only instrument capable of registering thought waves, experiments in telepathy prove. The law of thought attraction, like attracts like in the thought world, the wireless telegraphy of the mind, a field of energy with established laws. The universe is governed by law, one great law. Its manifestations are multiform, but viewed from the ultimate there is but one law. We are familiar with some of its manifestations, but are almost totally ignorant of certain others. Still, we are learning a little more every day. The veil is being gradually lifted. We speak learnedly of the law of gravitation, but ignore that equally wonderful manifestation, the law of attraction in the thought world. We are familiar with that wonderful manifestation of law which draws and holds together the atoms of which matter is composed. We recognize the power of the law that attracts bodies to the earth, that holds the circling worlds in their places, but we close our eyes to the mighty law that draws to us the things we desire or fear, that makes or mars our lives. When we come to see that thought is a force, a manifestation of energy, having a magnet-like power of attraction, we will begin to understand the why and wherefore of many things that have heretofore seemed dark to us. There is no study that will so well repay the student for his time and trouble as the study of the workings of this mighty law of the world of thought, the law of attraction. When we think we send out vibrations of a fine ethereal substance, which are as real as the vibrations manifesting light, heat, electricity, magnetism. That these vibrations are not evident to our five senses is no proof that they do not exist. A powerful magnet will send out vibrations and exert a force sufficient to attract to itself a piece of steel weighing 100 pounds, but we can neither see, taste, smell, hear nor feel the mighty force. These thought vibrations, likewise, cannot be seen, tasted, smelled, heard, nor felt in the ordinary way, although it is true there are On record cases of persons peculiarly sensitive to psychic impressions, who have perceived powerful thought waves, and very many of us can testify that we have distinctly felt the thought vibrations of others, both whilst in the presence of the sender and at a distance. Telepathy and its kindred phenomena are not idle dreams. Light and heat are manifested by vibrations of a far lower intensity than those of thought, but the difference is solely in the rate of vibration. The Annals of Science throw an interesting light upon this question. Prof. Elisha Gray, an eminent scientist, says in his little book, The Miracles of Nature, there is much food for speculation in the thought that there exist sound waves that no human ear can hear, and color waves of light that no eye can see. The long, dark, soundless space between 40,000 and 400 trillion vibrations per second, and the infinity of range beyond 700 trillion vibrations per second, where light ceases in the universe of motion, makes it possible to indulge in speculation. M. Williams, in his work entitled Short Chapters in Science, says, "There is no gradation between the most rapid undulations or tremblings that produce our sensation of sound, and the slowest of those which give rise to our sensations of gentlest warmth. There is a huge gap between them, wide enough to include another world of motion, all lying between our world of sound and our world of heat and light, and there is no good reason whatever for supposing that matter is incapable of such intermediate activity, or that such activity may not give rise to intermediate sensations, provided there are organs for taking up and sensifying their movements. I cite the above authorities merely to give you food for thought, not to attempt to demonstrate to you the fact that thought vibrations exist. The last named fact has been fully established to the satisfaction of numerous investigators of the subject, and a little reflection will show you that it coincides with your own experiences. We often hear repeated the well-known mental science statement, "Thoughts are things," and we say these words over without consciously realizing just what is the meaning of the statement. If we fully comprehended the truth of the statement and the natural consequences of the truth back of it, we should understand many things which have appeared dark to us, and would be able to use the wonderful power, thought force, just as we use any other manifestation of energy. As I have said, when we think we set into motion vibrations of a very high degree, but just as real as the vibrations of light, heat, sound, electricity. And when we understand the laws governing the production and transmission of these vibrations, we will be able to use them in our daily life, just as we do the better known forms of energy that we cannot see, hear, weigh, or measure. These vibrations is no proof that they do not exist. There exist waves of sound which no human ear can hear, although some of these are undoubtedly registered by the ear of some of the insects, and others are caught by delicate scientific instruments invented by man, yet there is a great gap between the sounds registered by the most delicate instrument and the limit which man's mind, reasoning by analogy, knows to be the boundary line between sound waves and some other forms of vibration. And there are light waves which the eye of man does not register, some of which may be detected by more delicate instruments, and many more so fine that the instrument has not yet been invented which will detect them, although improvements are being made every year and the unexplored field gradually lessened. As new instruments are invented, new vibrations are registered by them, and yet the vibrations were just as real before the invention of the instrument as afterward. Supposing that we had no instruments to register magnetism, one might be justified in denying the existence of that mighty force, because it could not be tasted, felt, smelt, heard, seen, weighed, or measured. And yet the mighty magnet would still send out waves of force sufficient to draw to it pieces of steel weighing hundreds of pounds. Each form of vibration requires its own form of instrument for registration. At present, the human brain seems to be the only instrument capable of registering thought waves, although occultists say that in this century scientists will invent apparatus sufficiently delicate to catch and register such impressions. And from present indications, it looks as if the invention named might be expected at any time. The demand exists and undoubtedly will be soon supplied. But to those who have experimented along the lines of practical telepathy, no further proof is required than the results of their own experiments. We are sending out thoughts of greater or less intensity all the time, and we are reaping the results of such thoughts. Not only do our thought waves influence ourselves and others, but they have a drawing power. They attract to us the thoughts of others, things, circumstances, people, luck, in accord with the character of the thought uppermost in our minds. Thoughts of love will attract to us the love of others. Circumstances and surroundings in accord with the thought, people who are of like thought. Thoughts of anger, hate, envy, malice, and jealousy will draw to us the foul brood of kindred thoughts emanating from the minds of others, circumstances in which we will be called upon to manifest these vile thoughts and will receive them in turn from others. People who will manifest inharmony, and so on. A strong thought, or a thought long continued, will make us the center of attraction for the corresponding thought waves of others. Like attracts. Like in the thought world, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Birds of a feather flock together in the thought world, curses like chickens come home to roost, and bring their friends with them. The man or woman who is filled with love sees love on all sides and attracts the love of others. The man with hate in his heart gets all the hate he can stand. The man who thinks fight generally runs up against all the fight he wants before he gets through. And so it goes, each gets what he calls for over the wireless telegraphy of the mind. The man who rises in the morning feeling grumpy usually manages to have the whole family in the same mood before the breakfast is over. The nagging woman generally finds enough to gratify her nagging propensity during the day. This matter of thought attraction is a serious one. When you stop to think of it, you will see that a man really makes his own surroundings, although he blames others for it. I have known people who understood this law to hold a positive, calm thought and be absolutely unaffected by the inharmony surrounding them. They were like the vessel from which the oil had been poured on the troubled waters. They rested safely and calmly whilst the tempest raged around them. One is not at the mercy of the fitful storms of thought after he has learned the workings of the law. We have passed through the age of physical force on to the age of intellectual supremacy, and are now entering a new and almost unknown field, that of psychic power. This field of energy has its established laws, as well as have the others, and we should acquaint ourselves with them, or we will be crowded to the wall as are the ignorant on the plains of effort. I will endeavor to make plain to you the great underlying principles of this new field of energy which is opening up before us, that you may be able to make use of this great power and apply it for legitimate and worthy purposes, just as men are using steam, electricity, and other forms of energy today. Chapter 2. Thought waves and their process of reproduction. How thought waves traverse the sea of mind, the power possessed of reproducing themselves, vibrations which affect us, those which do not. Why? We are what? We have thought ourselves into being, the agency of others' thoughts in shaping our destiny, the working of the law of attraction illustrated by the Marconi wireless instruments. The mind has many degrees of pitch: positive thought, negative thought. We are positive to some, negative to others, and knowledge of mental law can change us from negative to positive, more people on negative plane than on positive plane, consequently more negative thought vibrations. How to counterbalance them: affirmations and autosuggestions, and their uses. Establishing new mental attitudes, development of the will, a high tension not at all times desirable advantage of changing from positive to receptive, at will. Like a stone thrown into the water, thought produces ripples and waves, which spread out over the great ocean of thought. There is this difference, however: the waves on the water move only on a level plane, in all directions, whereas thought waves move in all directions from a common center, just as do the rays from the sun. Just as we here on earth are surrounded by a great sea of air, so are we surrounded by a great sea of mind. Our thought waves move through this vast mental ether, extending, however, in all directions, as I have explained, becoming somewhat lessened in intensity according to the distance traversed, because of the friction occasioned by the waves coming in contact with the great body of mind surrounding us on all sides. These thought waves have other qualities differing from the waves on the water. They have the property of reproducing themselves. In this respect, they resemble sound waves rather than waves upon the water. Just as a note of the violin will cause the thin glass to vibrate and sing, so will a strong thought tend to awaken similar vibrations in minds attuned to receive it. Many of the stray thoughts which come to us are but reflections or answering vibrations to some strong thought sent out by another. But unless our minds are attuned to receive it, the thought will not likely affect us. If we are thinking high and great thoughts, our minds acquire a certain keynote corresponding to the character of the thoughts we have been thinking. And, this keynote once established, we will be apt to catch the vibrations of other minds keyed to the same thought. On the other hand, let us get into the habit of thinking thoughts of an opposite character, and we will soon be echoing the low order of thought emanating from the minds of the thousands thinking along the same lines. We are largely what we have thought ourselves into being, the balance being represented by the character of the suggestions and thought of others, which have reached us either directly by verbal suggestions or telepathically by means of such thought waves. Our general mental attitude, however, determines the character of the thought waves received from others as well as the thoughts emanating from ourselves. We receive only such thoughts as are in harmony with the general mental attitude held by ourselves, the thoughts not in harmony affecting us very little, as they awaken no response in us. The man who believes thoroughly in himself and maintains a positive, strong mental attitude of confidence and determination is not likely to be affected by the adverse and negative thoughts of discouragement and failure emanating from the minds of other persons in whom these last qualities predominate. At the same time, these negative thoughts, if they reach one whose mental attitude is pitched on a low key, deepen his negative state and add fuel to the fire which is consuming his strength. Or, if you prefer this figure, serve to further smother the fire of his energy and activity. We attract to us the thoughts of others of the same order of thought. The man who thinks success will be apt to get into tune with the minds of others thinking likewise, and they will help him and he them. The man who allows his mind to dwell constantly upon thoughts of failure brings himself into close touch with the minds of other failure people, and each will tend to pull the other down still more. The man who thinks that all is evil is apt to see much evil, and will be brought into contact with others who will seem to prove his theory. And the man who looks for good in everything and everybody will be likely to attract to himself the things and people corresponding to his thought. We generally see that for which we look. You will be able to carry this idea more clearly if you will think of the Marconi wireless instruments, which receive the vibrations only from the sending instrument which has been attuned to the same key, while other telegrams are passing through the air in near vicinity without affecting the instrument. The same law applies to the operations of thought. We receive only that which corresponds to our mental attunement. If we have been discouraged, we may rest assured that we have dropped into a negative key, and have been affected not only by our own thoughts but have also received the added depressing thoughts of similar character, which are constantly being sent out from the minds of other unfortunates who have not yet learned the law of attraction in the thought world. And if we occasionally rise to heights of enthusiasm and energy, how quickly we feel the inflow of the courageous, daring, energetic, positive thoughts being sent out by the live men and women of the world. We recognize this without much trouble when we come in personal contact with people and feel their vibrations, depressing or invigorating, as the case may be. But the same law operates when we are not in their presence, although less strongly. The mind has many degrees of pitch, ranging from the highest positive note to the lowest negative note, with many notes in between, varying in pitch according to their respective distance from the positive or negative extreme. When your mind is operating along positive lines, you feel strong, buoyant, bright, cheerful, happy, confident, and courageous, and are enabled to do your work well, to carry out your intentions and progress on your road to success. You send out strong positive thought, which affects others and causes them to cooperate with you or to follow your lead, according to their own mental keynote. When you are playing on the extreme negative end of the mental keyboard, you feel depressed, weak, passive, dull, fearful, cowardly, and you find yourself unable to make progress or to succeed. And your effect upon others is practically nil. You are led by, rather than leading others, and are used as a human doormat or football by more positive persons. In some persons, the positive element seems to predominate, and in others, the negative quality seems to be more in evidence. There are, of course, widely varying degrees of positiveness and negativeness, and B may be negative to A, while positive to C. When two people first meet, there is generally a silent mental conflict in which their respective minds test their quality of positiveness and fix their relative position toward each other. This process may be unconscious in many cases, but it occurs. Nevertheless, the adjustment is often automatic, but occasionally the struggle is so sharp, the opponents being so well matched, that the matter forces itself into the consciousness of the two people. Sometimes, both parties are so much alike in their degrees of positiveness that they practically fail to come to terms. Mentally, they never really are able to get along with each other, and they are either mutually repelled and separate or else stay together amid constant broils and wrangling. We are positive or negative to everyone with whom we have relations. We may be positive to our children, our employees, and dependents, but we are at the same time negative to others to whom we occupy inferior positions, or whom we have allowed to assert themselves over us. Of course, something may occur and we will suddenly become more positive than the man or woman to whom we have heretofore been negative. We frequently see cases of this kind. And as the knowledge of these mental laws becomes more general, we will see many more instances of persons asserting themselves and making use of their newfound power. But remember, you possess the power to raise the keynote of your mind to a positive pitch by an effort of the will. And, of course, it is equally true that you may allow yourself to drop into a low, negative note by carelessness or a weak will. There are more people on the negative plane of thought than on the positive plane, and consequently there are more negative thought vibrations in operation in our mental atmosphere. But, happily for us, this is counterbalanced by the fact that a positive thought is infinitely more powerful than a negative one, and if by force of will we raise ourselves to a higher mental key, we can shut out the depressing thoughts and may take up the vibrations corresponding with our changed mental attitude. This is one of the secrets of the affirmations and autosuggestions used by the several schools of mental science and other new thought cults. There is no particular merit in affirmations of themselves, but they serve a twofold purpose. 1. They tend to establish new mental attitudes within us and act wonderfully in the direction of character building, the science of making ourselves over. 2. They tend to raise the mental keynote so that we may get the benefit of the positive thought waves of others on the same plane of thought. Whether or not we believe in them, we are constantly making affirmations. The man who asserts that he can and will do a thing, and asserts it earnestly, develops in himself the qualities conducive to the well-doing of that thing, and at the same time places his mind in the proper key to receive all the thought waves likely to help him in the doing. If, on the other hand, one says and feels that he is going to fail, he will choke and smother the thoughts coming from his own subconscious mentality which are intended to help him, and at the same time will place himself in tune with the failure thought of the world, and there is plenty of the latter kind of thought around, I can tell you. Do not allow yourselves to be affected by the adverse and negative thoughts of those around you. Rise to the upper chambers of your mental dwelling, and key yourself up to a strong pitch, away above the vibrations on the lower planes of thought. Then you will not only be immune to their negative vibrations but will be in touch with the great body of strong positive thought coming from those of your own plane of development. My aim will be to direct and train you in the proper use of thought and will, that you may have yourself well in hand and may be able to strike the positive key at any moment you may feel it necessary. It is not necessary to strike the extreme note on all occasions. The better plan is to keep yourself in a comfortable key, without much strain, and to have the means at command whereby you can raise the pitch at once when occasion demands. By this knowledge you will not be at the mercy of the old automatic action of the mind, but may have it well under your own control. Development of the will is very much like the development of a muscle, a matter of practice and gradual improvement. At first it is apt to be tiresome, but at each trial one grows stronger until the new strength becomes real and permanent. Many of us have made ourselves positive under sudden calls or emergencies. We are in the habit of bracing up when occasion demands. But by intelligent practice you will be so much strengthened that your habitual state will be equal to your bracing up stage now, and then when you find it necessary to apply the spur you will be able to reach a stage not dreamed of at present. Do not understand me as advocating a high tension continuously. This is not at all desirable, not only because it is apt to be too much of a strain upon you but also because you will find it desirable to relieve the tension at times and become receptive that you may absorb impressions. It is well to be able to relax and assume a certain degree of receptiveness, knowing that you are always able to spring back to the more positive state at will. The habitually strongly positive man loses much enjoyment and recreation. Positive, you give out expressions; receptive, you take in impressions. Positive, you are a teacher; receptive, a pupil. It is not only a good thing to be a good teacher, but it is also very important to be a good listener at times. Chapter 3. A talk about the mind. Man has but one mind, functions along two lines of mental effort, passive effort, often result of vibratory impulses imparted in ages long past, active effort newborn, thought impulse and motion impulse result of active effort, active function creates, passive function obeys orders and suggestions, active function sends forth vibrations, the force of habit, appetency, the impulse of the primal cause. Life force, mental culture and mental development, two different things. The amenability of the mind to the will the outward manifestation of the I am, the attraction of the absolute, the real man, the master, active and passive functions but tools. Man has but one mind, but he has many mental faculties, each faculty being capable of functioning along two different lines of mental effort. There are no distinct dividing lines separating the two several functions of a faculty, but they shade into each other as do the colors of the spectrum. An active effort of any faculty of the mind is the result of a direct impulse imparted at the time of the effort. A passive effort of any faculty of the mind is the result of either a preceding active effort of the same mind, an active effort of another along the lines of suggestion, thought vibrations from the mind of another, thought impulses from an ancestor, transmitted by the laws of heredity, including impulses transmitted from generation to generation from the time of the original vibratory impulse, imparted by the primal cause, which impulses gradually unfold and unsheath when the proper state of evolutionary development is reached. The active effort is newborn, fresh from the mint, whilst the passive effort is of less recent creation, and, in fact, is often the result of vibratory impulses imparted in ages long past. The active effort makes its own way, brushing aside the impeding vines and kicking from its path the obstructing stones. The passive effort travels along the beaten path. A thought impulse, or motion impulse, originally caused by an active effort of faculty, may become by continued repetition, or habit, strictly automatic, the impulse given it by the repeated active effort developing a strong momentum, which carries it on, along passive lines, until stopped by another active effort or its direction changed by the same cause. On the other hand, thought impulses, or motion impulses, continued along passive lines may be terminated or corrected by an active effort. The active function creates, changes, or destroys. The passive function carries on the work given it by the active function and obeys orders and suggestions. The active function produces the thought habit, or motion habit, and imparts to it the vibrations which carry it on along the passive lines. Thereafter, the active function also has the power to send forth vibrations which neutralize the momentum of the thought habit, or motion habit. It also is able to launch a new thought habit, or motion habit, with stronger vibrations, which overcomes and absorbs the first thought, or motion, and substitutes the new one. All thought impulses, or motion impulses, once started on their errands, continue to vibrate along passive lines until corrected or terminated by subsequent impulses imparted by the active function, or other controlling power. The continuance of the original impulse adds momentum and force to it, and renders its correction or termination more difficult. This explains that which is called the force of habit. I think that this will be readily understood by those who have struggled to overcome a habit which had been easily acquired. The law applies to good habits as well as bad. The moral is obvious. Several of the faculties of the mind often combine to produce a single manifestation. A task to be performed may call for the combined exercise of several faculties, some of which may manifest by active effort and others by passive effort. The meeting of new conditions, new problems, calls for the exercise of active effort, whilst a familiar problem or task can be easily handled by the passive effort without the assistance of his more enterprising brother. There is in nature an instinctive tendency of living organisms to perform certain actions, the tendency of an organized body to seek that which satisfies the wants of its organism. This tendency is sometimes called appetency. It is really a passive mental impulse, originating with the impetus imparted by the primal cause, and transmitted along the lines of evolutionary development, gaining strength and power as it progresses. The impulse of the primal cause is assisted by the powerful upward attraction exerted by the absolute. In plant life, this tendency is plainly discernible, ranging from the lesser exhibitions in the lower types to the greater in the higher types. It is that which is generally spoken of as the life force in plants. It is, however, a manifestation of rudimentary mentation, functioning along the lines of passive effort. In some of the higher forms of plant life there appears a Faint color of independent life action, a faint indication of choice of volition. Writers on plant life relate many remarkable instances of this phenomenon. It is, undoubtedly, an exhibition of rudimentary active mentation. In the lower animal kingdom, a very high degree of passive mental effort is found, and, varying in degree in the several families and species, a considerable amount of active mentation is apparent. The lower animal undoubtedly possesses reason only in a lesser degree than man, and, in fact, the display of volitional mentation exhibited by an intelligent animal is often nearly as high as that shown by the lower types of man or by a young child. As a child, before birth, shows in its body the stages of the physical evolution of man, so does a child, before and after birth, until maturity, manifests the stages of the mental evolution of man. Man, the highest type of life yet produced, at least upon this planet, shows the highest form of passive mentation, and also a much higher development of active mentation than is seen in the lower animals, and yet the degrees of that power vary widely among the different races of men. Even among men of our race, the different degrees of active mentation are plainly noticeable, these degrees not depending by any means upon the amount of culture, social position, or educational advantages possessed by the individual. Mental culture and mental development are two very different things. You have but to look around you to see the different stages of the development of active mentation in man. The reasoning of many men is scarcely more than passive mentation, exhibiting but little of the qualities of volitional thought. They prefer to let other men think for them. Active mentation tires them, and they find the instinctive, automatic, passive mental process much easier. Their minds work along the lines of least resistance. They are but little more than human sheep. Among the lower animals and the lower types of men, active mentation is largely confined to the grosser faculties, the more material plane, the higher mental faculties working along the instinctive, automatic lines of the passive function. As the lower forms of life progressed in the evolutionary scale, they developed new faculties, which were latent within them. These faculties always manifested in the form of rudimentary passive functioning, and afterwards worked up, through higher passive forms, until the active functions were brought into play. The evolutionary process still continues, the invariable tendency being toward the goal of highly developed active mentation. This evolutionary progress is caused by the vibratory impulse imparted by the primal cause, aided by the uplifting attraction of the absolute. This law of evolution is still in progress, and man is beginning to develop new powers of mind, which, of course, are first manifesting themselves along the lines of passive effort. Some men have developed these new faculties to a considerable degree, and it is possible that before long man will be able to exercise them along the line of their active functions. In fact, this power has already been attained by a few. This is the secret of the Oriental occultists and of some of their Occidental brethren. The amenability of the mind to the will can be increased by properly directed practice. That which we are in the habit of referring to as the strengthening of the will is in reality the training of the mind to recognize and absorb the power within. The will is strong enough, it does not need strengthening, but the mind needs to be trained to receive and act upon the suggestions of the will. The will is the outward manifestation of the I am. The will current is flowing in full strength along the spiritual wires, but you must learn how to raise the trolley pole to touch it before the mental car will move. This is a somewhat different idea from that which you have been in the habit of receiving from writers on the subject of willpower, but it is correct, as you will demonstrate to your own satisfaction if you will follow up the subject by experiments. along the proper lines. The attraction of the absolute is drawing man upward, and the vibratory force of the primal impulse has not yet exhausted itself. The time of evolutionary development has come when man can help himself. The man who understands the law can accomplish wonders by means of the development of the powers of the mind, whilst the man who turns his back upon the truth will suffer from his lack of knowledge of the law. He who understands the laws of his mental being develops his latent powers and uses them intelligently. He does not despise his passive mental functions, but makes good use of them, also charges them with the duties for which they are best fitted, and is able to obtain wonderful results from their work, having mastered them and trained them to do the bidding of the higher self. When they fail to do their work properly, he regulates them, and his knowledge prevents him from meddling with them unintelligently, and thereby doing himself harm. He develops the faculties and powers latent within him and learns how to manifest them along the line of active mentation as well as passive. He knows that the real man within him is the master to whom both active and passive functions are but tools. He has banished fear and enjoys freedom. He has found himself. He has learned the secret of the I Am. Chapter 4. Mind Building. The power of man, unconscious mind building, the I, the sovereign of the mind, the universal will, the mastery of the lower self, the mental misgoverned by irresponsible faculties, the re-establishment of order in the mental kingdom, the first battle, the conquest of the lesser self by the real self. Affirmation and exercise. Man can build up his mind and make it what he wills. In fact, we are mind building every hour of our lives, either consciously or unconsciously. The majority of us are doing the work unconsciously, but those who have seen a little below the surface of things have taken the matter in hand and have become conscious creators of their own mentality. They are no longer subject to the suggestions and influences of others but have become masters of themselves. They assert the I and compel obedience from the subordinate mental faculties. The I is the sovereign of the mind, and what we call will is the instrument of the I. Of course, there is something back of this, and the universal will is higher than the will of the individual, but the latter is in much closer touch with the universal will than is generally supposed, and when one conquers the lower self and asserts the I, he becomes in close touch with the universal will and partakes largely of its wonderful power. The moment one asserts the I and finds himself, he establishes a close connection between the individual will and the universal will. But before he is able to avail himself of the mighty power at his command, he must first effect the mastery of the lower self. Think of the absurdity of man claiming to manifest powers when he is the slave of the lower parts of his mental being, which should be subordinate. Think of a man being the slave of his moods, passions, animal appetites, and lower faculties, and at the same time trying to claim the benefits of the will. Now, I am not preaching asceticism, which seems to me to be a confession of weakness. I am speaking of self-mastery, the assertion of the I over the subordinate parts of oneself. In the higher view of the subject, this I is the only real self, and the rest is the non-self, but our space does not permit the discussion of this point, and we will use the word self as meaning the entire man. Before a man can assert the I in its full strength, he must obtain the complete mastery of the subordinate parts of the self. All things are good when we learn to master them, but no thing is good when it masters us. Just so long as we allow the lower portions of the self to give us orders, we are slaves. It is only when the I mounts his throne and lifts the scepter that order is established and things assume their proper relation to each other. We are finding no fault with those who are swayed by their lower Cells, they are in a lower grade of evolution and will work up in time. But we are calling the attention of those who are ready to the fact that the sovereign must assert his will, and that the subjects must obey. Orders must be given and carried out. Rebellion must be put down, and the rightful authority insisted upon. And the time to do it is now. You have been allowing your rebellious subjects to keep the king from his throne. You have been allowing the mental kingdom to be misgoverned by irresponsible faculties. You have been the slaves of appetite, unworthy thoughts, passion, and negativeness. The will has been set aside and low desire has usurped the throne. It is time to re-establish order in the mental kingdom. You are able to assert the mastery over any emotion, appetite, passion, or class of thoughts by the assertion of the will. You can order fear to go to the rear, jealousy to leave your presence, hate to depart from your sight, anger to hide itself, worry to cease troubling you, uncontrolled appetite, and passion to bow in submission and to become humble slaves instead of masters, all by the assertion of the I. You may surround yourself with the glorious company of courage, love, and self-control, by the same means. You may put down the rebellion and secure peace and order in your mental kingdom if you will but utter the mandate and insist upon its execution. Before you march forth to empire, you must establish the proper internal conditions, must show your ability to govern your own kingdom. The first battle is the conquest of the lesser self by the real self. Affirmation: I am asserting the mastery of my real self. Repeat these words earnestly and positively during the day, at least once an hour, and particularly when you are confronted with conditions which tempt you to act on the lines of the lesser self instead of following the course dictated by the real self. In the moment of doubt and hesitation, say these words earnestly, and your way will be made clear to you. Repeat them several times after you retire and settle yourself to sleep. But be sure to back up the words with the thought inspiring them, and do not merely repeat them parrot-like. Form the mental image of the real self asserting its mastery over the lower planes of your mind. See the king on his throne. You will become conscious of an influx of new thought, and things which have seemed hard for you will suddenly become much easier. You will feel that you have yourself well in hand, and that you are the master and not the slave. The thought you are holding will manifest itself in action, and you will steadily grow to become that which you have in mind. Exercise. Fix the mind firmly on the higher self and draw inspiration from it when you feel led to yield to the promptings of the lower part of your nature. When you are tempted to burst into anger, assert the I, and your voice will drop. Anger is unworthy of the developed self. When you feel vexed and cross, remember what you are, and rise above your feeling. When you feel fearful, remember that the real self fears nothing, and assert courage. When you feel jealousy inciting, think of your higher nature and laugh. And so on, asserting the real self and not allowing the things on the lower plane of mentality to disturb you. They are unworthy of you and must be taught to keep their places. Do not allow these things to master you. They should be your subjects, not your masters. You must get away from this plane, and the only way to do so is to cut loose from these phases of thought which have been running things to suit themselves. You may have trouble at the start, but keep at it and you will have that satisfaction which comes only from conquering the lower parts of our nature. You have been a slave long enough, now is the time to free yourselves. If you will follow these exercises faithfully, you will be a different being by the end of the year, and will look back with a pitying smile to your former condition. But it takes work. This is not child's play, but a task for earnest men and women. Will you make the effort? Chapter 5. The Secret of the Will. The willpower and its capability of being developed, disciplined, controlled, and directed. Every man the possessor, potentially, of a strong will, the great powerhouse of the universal willpower. Will does not need training, but mind does. Mind, the instrument. Mentally lazy people, strong will follows strong desire. The price of attainment, the real test, the secret of the development of the will. Autosuggestion and exercise. While psychologists may differ in their theories regarding the nature of the will, none deny its existence, nor question its power. All persons recognize the power of strong will. All see how it may be used to overcome the greatest obstacles. But few realize that the will may be developed and strengthened by intelligent practice. They feel that they could accomplish wonders if they had a strong will, but instead of attempting to develop it, they content themselves with vain regrets. They sigh, but do nothing. Those who have investigated the subject closely know that willpower, with all its latent possibilities and mighty powers, may be developed, disciplined, controlled, and directed, just as may be any other of nature's forces. It does not matter what theory you may entertain about the nature of the will, you will obtain the results if you practice intelligently. Personally, I have a somewhat odd theory about the will. I believe that every man has, potentially, a strong will, and that all he has to do is to train his mind to make use of it. I think that in the higher regions of the mind of every man is a great store of willpower awaiting his use. The will current is running along the psychic wires, and all that it is necessary to do is to raise the mental trolley pole and bring down the power for your use. And the supply is unlimited, for your little storage battery is connected with the great powerhouse of the universal will power, and the power is inexhaustible. Your will does not need training, but your mind does. The mind is the instrument, and the supply of willpower is proportionate to the fineness of the instrument through which it manifests. But you needn't accept this theory if you don't like it. This lesson will fit your theory as well as mine. He who has developed his mind so that it will allow the willpower to manifest through it, has opened up wonderful possibilities for himself. Not only has he found a great power at his command, but he is able to bring into play and use faculties, talents, and abilities of whose existence he has not dreamed. This secret of the will is the magic key which opens all doors. The late Donald G. Mitchell once wrote, "Resolve is what makes a man manifest, not puny resolve, but crude determination, not errant purpose, but that strong and indefatigable will which treads down difficulties and danger, as a boy treads down the heaving frostlands of winter, which kindles his eye and brain with a proud pulse beat toward the unattainable. Will makes men giants." Many of us feel that if we would but exert our will, we might accomplish wonders. But somehow we do not seem to want to take the trouble. At any rate, we do not get to the actual willing point. We put it off from time to time, and talk vaguely of some day, but that some day never comes. We instinctively feel the power of the will, but we haven't enough energy to exercise it, and so drift along with the tide, unless perhaps some friendly difficulty arises, some helpful obstacle appears in our path, or some kindly pain stirs us into action, in either of which cases we are compelled to assert our will and thus begin to accomplish something. The trouble with us is that we do not want to do the thing enough to make us exert our willpower. We don't want a hard enough. We are mentally lazy and of weak desire. If you do not like the word desire, substitute for it the word aspiration. Some people call the lower impulses desires, and the higher, aspirations. It's all a matter of words. Take your choice. That is the trouble. Let a man be in danger of losing his life, let a woman be in danger of losing a great love, and you will witness a startling exhibition of willpower from an unexpected source. Let a woman's child be threatened with danger, and she will manifest a degree of courage and will that sweeps all before it. And yet the same woman will quail before a domineering husband, and will lack the will to perform a simple task. A boy will do all sorts of work if he but considers it play, and yet he can scarcely force himself to cut a little firewood. Strong will follow strong desire. If you really want to do a thing very much, you can usually develop the willpower to accomplish it. The trouble is that you have not really wanted to do these things, and yet you blame your will. You say that you do want to do it, but if you stop to think, you will see that you really want to do something else more than the thing in question. You are not willing to pay the price of attainment. Stop a moment and analyze this statement and apply it to your own case. You are mentally lazy, that's the trouble. Don't talk to me about not having enough will. You have a great storehouse of will awaiting your use, but you are too lazy to use it. Now, if you are really in earnest about this matter, get to work and first find out what you really want to do. Then start to work and do it. Never mind about the willpower, you'll find a full supply of that whenever you need it. The thing to do is to get to the point where you will resolve to will. That's the real test, the resolving. Think of these things a little, and make up your mind whether or not you really want to be a willer sufficiently hard to get to work. Many excellent essays and books have been written on this subject, all of which agree regarding the greatness of willpower, the most enthusiastic terms being used, but few have anything to say about how this power may be acquired by those who have it not, or who possess it in but a limited degree. Some have given exercises designed to strengthen the will, which exercises really strengthen the mind so that it is able to draw upon its store of power. But they have generally overlooked the fact that in autosuggestion is to be found the secret of the development of the mind so that it may become the efficient instrument of the will. Autosuggestion. I am using my willpower. Say these words several times earnestly and positively, immediately after finishing this article. Then repeat them frequently during the day, at least once an hour, and particularly when you meet something that calls for the exercise of willpower. Also repeat them several times after you retire and settle yourself for sleep. Now, there is nothing in these words unless you back them up with the thought. In fact, the thought is the whole thing, and the words only pegs upon which to hang the thought. So think of what you are saying, and mean what you say. You must use faith at the start, and use the words with a confident expectation of the result. Hold the steady thought that you are drawing on your storehouse of willpower, and before long you will find that thought is taking form in action, and that your willpower is manifesting itself. You will feel an influx of strength with each repetition of the words. You will find yourself overcoming difficulties and bad habits, and will be surprised at how things are being smoothed out for you. Exercise. Perform at least one disagreeable task each day during the month. If there is any specially disagreeable task which you would like to shirk, that is the one for you to perform. This is not given you in order to make you self-sacrificing or meek, or anything of that sort. It is given you to exercise your will. Anyone can do a pleasant thing cheerfully, but it takes will to do the unpleasant thing cheerfully, and that is how you must do the work. It will prove a most valuable discipline to you. Try it for a month and you will see where it comes in if you shirk this exercise. You had better stop right here and acknowledge that you do not want willpower, and are content to stay where you are and remain a. As thought vibration, or the law of attraction in the thought world, draws to a close, William Walker Atkinson leaves readers with a profound and empowering message. The mind is the most potent tool at our disposal, capable of shaping our destiny and creating the life we desire. Throughout the book, Atkinson has shown that our thoughts are not passive reflections of reality but active forces that can attract circumstances, people, and opportunities in alignment with our mental vibrations. The conclusion reinforces the importance of cultivating a disciplined and positive mindset, emphasizing that by aligning our thoughts with the higher laws of the universe, we can manifest our goals, overcome obstacles, and achieve a sense of inner peace and fulfillment. Atkinson urges readers to take responsibility for their mental state, to be vigilant in directing their thoughts, and to maintain an unwavering belief in their ability to influence their own lives. Ultimately, Atkinson's work is a call to action, a reminder that the power to transform our lives lies within us, in the thoughts we choose to think and the vibrations we send out into the world. For viewers of 365 Motivationals, this conclusion serves as an inspiring and motivating challenge to harness the power of thought and consciously create a life of success, happiness, and alignment with the universal laws of attraction.